civil war rages on. In every province, warlords fight, while the Han dynasty is now secretly controlled by Cao Cao, who holds the young Emperor Xian in his capital of Xuchang. Liu Bei, having rebelled against Cao Cao, has been defeated and is now on the run towards the south, with his friends Zhang Fei and Guan Yu and a small band of soldiers. Despite this rout, Liu Bei's imperial ambition has not ceased. After having been defeated by Cao Cao in Runan, Liu Bei escaped. Several days later, the wandering warlord found refuge in the south center of the country. Liu Biao, the governor of Jing province, allowed him to stay in his territory, as he also feared Cao Cao. Liu Biao took the opportunity of the situation, stationing Liu Bei in the north of Jing province, near the border with Cao Cao's zone at Xinye County. That way, if Cao Cao attacked, Liu Bei would receive the first blow. At first, Liu Biao was very supportive of Liu Bei, but as time passed, his guest, who is naturally charismatic, gained a huge support of the local population. In these chaotic and backstabbing times, the governor Liu Biao became skeptical and grew suspicious of his guest. This short period of peace would not last, and trouble soon reached Liu Bei again. Cao Cao, who had by now become the most powerful of the remaining warlords and still controlled the Han court, sought to subdue his neighboring rivals. He sent his generals to attack Jing province in 202. Liu Bei was sent to intercept Cao's army. Both sides clashed at the Battle of Bo. After some initial fighting, Liu Bei suddenly burned down his own camp and fled south with his troops into narrow and bushy paths. This was of course a ruse to ambush Cao Cao's forces, who walked into the trap and were defeated. In the years that followed, Cao Cao would be pacifying the north, taking conflict away with him. Jing province, spared from civil war, became prosperous. Many scholars who fled the war came to the region, and the population thrived. Seeking counselors, Liu Bei asked scholars around him about wise men he could listen to. It was then that he first heard of Zhuge Liang. That man was renowned as a great sage and a strategist, which spiked Liu Bei's curiosity. This was the kind of advisor he needed. Liu Bei invited Zhuge Liang to meet him, but the sage did not comply, and Liu Bei had to go to him instead in his Longzhong residence. In the year 207, after several visits, the scholar accepted to join Liu Bei in his quest of imperial ambition. The Longzhong plan was conceived by Zhuge Liang. It laid a path for Liu Bei to defeat his rivals. He would have to take control of Jing province and Yi province and use these regions as a base to campaign against Cao Cao with the help of another emerging warlord, Sun Quan. All Liu Bei now needed was an opportunity. Liu Biao, the old governor of Jing province, died in 208. Cao Cao seized this occasion to extend his territory south, and he began to mobilize. The two sons of Liu Biao, Liu Cong and Liu Qi, rivaled for taking control of Jing province. Liu Cong ultimately inherited the position, but the young man preferred to surrender straight away to the approaching Cao Cao. His brother, Liu Qi, disagreed with this decision. He in Jiangxia and Liu Bei in Xinye found themselves in a crossfire between the pro-Cao Cao Liu Cong to the south and Cao Cao himself to the north. The latter was a real threat, so Liu Bei and his 100,000 followers, mostly unarmed civilians, retreated towards the south. The mighty northern warlord, informed of this massive retreat, dispatched 5,000 elite cavalrymen to catch up with the retreating Liu Bei. Cao Cao's riders reached him at Turban and rapidly defeated Liu Bei, who was able to flee. The vast majority of the civilians were captured, alongside Liu Bei's daughters. Liu Bei and Zhang Fei and a few remaining followers crossed the river with ships organized by Guan Yu and went to Xiakou to seek refuge under his ally Liu Qi. Meanwhile, Zhuge Liang, Liu Bei's trusted advisor, had gone to Sun Quan, the only warlord left to the east, to discuss the forming of an alliance in accordance to the Longzhong plan.
主公有请。
请。
请。
孔明远来，令我大感欣慰。昨夜喜不能寐啊！ 我主刘玄德托在下拜见孙将军，赞曰：孙将军少年英主，南天一柱。
先生，请入座用茶。
谢座。
Sun Quan had recently been openly threatened by Cao Cao, so he agreed to an alliance with Liu Bei, in which Liu Qi also took part. Sun Quan counted about 30,000 soldiers, and Liu Bei and Liu Qi about 20,000. Cao Cao claimed to control over 800,000 soldiers. His army marched south. After preparations, the Sun Quan and Liu Bei alliance sailed upstream the Yangtze River to meet him. Cao Cao's vanguard was exhausted due to a long series of forced marches, and disease was spreading in his ranks. In the initial skirmish that took place, the Sun Quan-Liu Bei alliance won a decisive victory, and both sides withdrew temporarily. Cao Cao chained his own ships on the Yangtze River, maintaining the whole fleet in formation, while preparations were made for a naval engagement. Sun Quan's troops were locally commanded by the cunning Zhou Yu, a childhood friend of his late brother, who stationed most of Sun Quan's soldiers on ships on the river too. Liu Bei's forces all remained on land. Zhou Yu set a trap for Cao Cao's forces. He pretended to punish a subordinate general by humiliating him with a public beating. The officer, Huang Gai, an orphan self-taught in reading and in the military arts, long loyal to the Sun Quan family, was in on the plot. Now a prestigious general, he pretended surrendering to Cao Cao due to the fake punishment of Zhou Yu. After Cao Cao received the message, he ended up believing Huang Gai and failed to see a trap. Later, Huang Gai's ships detached from Sun Quan's fleet and sailed toward Cao Cao's. When Huang Gai's detachment arrived on Cao Cao's side, it was set on fire, and as flames spread, most of Cao Cao's fleet was set ablaze. In the chaos, a disorganized battle broke out. This was the Battle of the Red Cliffs. Cao's fleet, although much larger and stronger, was burned down almost entirely. The remaining Cao Cao forces disembarked and escaped in disarray, but they were caught up by Liu Bei's forces who had stayed on land. Cao Cao was defeated and had to retreat north, abandoning most of Jing province. The most powerful warlord of China had been repelled. Liu Bei then rushed to take control of the southern Jing province and secured the main commanderies. He settled his headquarters in Gong'an, where he recruited and strengthened his army, while Liu Qi officially became governor of Jing province thanks to Sun Quan, who controlled the north. A year after, in 209, Liu Qi died. Liu Bei then took the opportunity and finally took control of all of Jing province. In Sun Quan's opinion, he was just lending him the territory. The alliance between the two warlords was still going strong, and in a political marriage, a wedding between Liu Bei and Sun Quan's younger sister was organized. The warlord of the east further ceded some land to his ally, but in the perspective of Sun Quan, the territory controlled by Liu Bei was rightfully his, and he had only lent it to him until Liu Bei would conquer his own. To the west, in Yi province, two independent warlords controlled the westernmost points of China, Zhang Lu and Liu Zhang. The latter was unsettled with rumors that Cao Cao was planning to attack, first by invading Zhang Lu, then his own territory. In 211, Liu Zhang therefore sent delegates to suggest an alliance with Liu Bei. The delegates, however, disapproved of Liu Zhang's rule. Reportedly, instead of proposing an alliance, they clandestinely invited Liu Bei to invade Yi province. Liu Bei, cautious and cunning, understood that mobilizing all his forces would be a mistake. He left his friends Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, as well as his trusted advisor Zhuge Liang, in charge of Jing province. Liu Bei then travelled west. When he arrived in Yi province, Liu Zhang greeted him kindly, offering him more men and sent him to be posted at the border of his territory with Zhang Lu. In 212, after building up his forces, Liu Bei made his plan to capture Yi province by conquering its capital, Chengdu. He requested 10,000 soldiers and supplies from Liu Zhang, with the pretext of using them to deter Cao Cao from attacking. The warlord offered 4,000 men. The situation, however, turned. Thanks to a network of spies, Liu Zhang discovered that Liu Bei was, in reality, preparing to take control of Yi province from him. Infuriated, he dispatched his troops. Some of his subordinates further defected to Liu Bei, who had no difficulty defeating the remaining troops of Liu Zhang, capturing an extra 5,000 soldiers. In the spring of 213, now that Liu Zhang had spent a big part of his army, Liu Bei began campaigning in Yi province towards Chengdu, the capital. Liu Zhang sent general after general against him, but they either died or switched allegiance. By 214, Liu Bei's troops were at the gates of Chengdu, and after days of fighting, the besieged Liu Zhang surrendered, stating he refused to partake in any more bloodshed. Liu Bei entered Chengdu triumphant. Yi province was his. Back in the east, as Sun Quan had understood it, it was time for Liu Bei to relinquish Jing province, since he now had conquered his own territory. Liu Bei, however, refused, claiming he had legitimate control over all of western China. The two old allies mustered dozens of thousands of soldiers, preparing to go to war against each other. But before both sides could meet, Cao Cao, the greatest warlord of their times, began preparations to attack Yi province. To avoid being caught in a crossfire, Liu Bei made sure to de-escalate the situation with Sun Quan in the name of their technically still ongoing alliance. After negotiations to define a border between both territories, Sun Quan agreed to attack Cao Cao at Hefei to create a diversion. He was nonetheless defeated. In 215, Cao Cao attacked Yi province and rapidly defeated the local warlord Zhang Lu, capturing the Hanzhong region. His advisors urged him to continue the campaign south to capture the rest of Yi province, but Cao Cao disliked fighting in the mountainous area of western China. He instead offered to fortify Hanzhong, the territory he had just captured, and returned to his land. Liu Bei, coveting this area, dispatched his loyal friend Zhang Fei to Yi province, and after fighting for 50 days with Cao Cao's forces, he was able to capture much of the territory. In 218, Liu Bei split his army, sending Zhang Fei to the north and going east himself. Both armies were eventually driven back by Cao Cao's forces. The conflict then stabilized and turned into a stalemate. Cao Cao finally went to focus on his front with Sun Quan, withdrawing from northwestern China for good. In his place, he left several generals who in the following months would lose territory to Liu Bei and men to desertion. Unable to defend Hanzhong, the region would fall to Liu Bei. The Han dynasty would receive the last nail in its coffin in 219. Cao Cao forced Emperor Xian to create him king, gathering more political power. Upon learning of this, Liu Bei's advisors suggested he should declare himself a king too. So he would, becoming the king of Hanzhong and officially setting his headquarters in Chengdu. He also declared that his son, Liu Shan, would be his heir. His loyal follower, Guan Yu, in the momentum of the fight against Cao Cao, attempted to capture Fan Chong from him. Although inflicting heavy casualties to Cao Cao, Guan Yu was unable to achieve victory and had to retreat. Sun Quan, growing weary of the struggle with his western neighbour, proposed a marriage between his son and Guan Yu's daughter. The legendary warrior, however, immediately refused and further insulted Sun Quan's messenger. Furthermore, Guan Yu seized food supplies that belonged to Sun Quan for his own army. Upon learning of these two events, Sun Quan was infuriated and took this as a justification for war. He sent his general Liu Meng to invade Jing province in early winter 219. Along the way, the cunning Liu Meng organized the infiltration of surveillance towers to disable them and captured enemy soldiers' families to deter them from fighting. In consequence of this successful tactic, Guan Yu was unaware of Liu Meng's progress in Jing province. Many of Guan Yu's soldiers abandoned arms to go back to their relatives held hostage. Eventually, Guan Yu and his son were captured in an ambush and executed. Liu Bei had lost one of his earliest and most loyal followers. In his rage, he prepared a full-scale war against his former ally, Sun Quan. In parallel, Cao Cao died in 220, and his son Cao Pi inherited his position. Rapidly, Cao Pi deposed the Xian emperor, ending the Han dynasty forever, and founded the state of Cao Wei. He also made plans to attack Liu Bei. He was still focusing on avenging his friend Guan Yu rather than defending his front with Cao Pi. As it seemed like he could not be brought back to reason, one of Liu Bei's advisors, Mang Da, decided to defect to the state of Cao Wei, dealing another blow to the aging Liu Bei. Finally, his adoptive son, Liu Feng, who had already failed militarily in the past, was further defeated in a battle against the state of Cao Wei. After Liu Feng's return to Chengdu, his father, in a rage frenzy, ordered his execution. It appeared as if Liu Bei had lost part of his sanity, but his ambition had not weakened. In 221, on the 15th of May, fulfilling the oath he had made as a child under the tree in his hometown, Liu Bei finally declared himself emperor, founding the state of Shu Han. He had re-established his imperial lineage. I have received the mandate of heaven and inherited the noble work of my ancestors. I am obliged to restore peace and purge the empire of chaos. As of now, there are villains and barbarians causing destruction and harm to the people, while those who miss the Han dynasty eagerly hope for its restoration. I feel distressed. I can neither rest well nor have my meals in peace. I have prepared the armies and made an oath to bring heaven's punishment upon those evildoers. Later that same year, he mobilized his forces to attack Sun Quan. During the campaign, Zhang Fei, his other trusted follower and friend, was assassinated by subordinates who then defected to Sun Quan. Nonetheless, the state of Shu Han was making progress against the East warlord. As summer 222 broke out, an immense heatwave covered the country. Sun Quan's forces, led by Lu Xun, retreated and set up camp, as did Liu Bei's. At the most unexpected moment, Lu Xun ordered Sun Quan's forces to set fire to Liu Bei's camp. In the heat, the fire spread wildly, destroying a huge portion of the camp. In panic, Liu Bei and his men escaped and entrenched themselves on top of a hill. Lu Xun immediately besieged it, staying in the momentum. In order to escape, Liu Bei ordered his men to abandon their armor and set fire to it, in order to create a wall of fire. He then escaped to the fortress of Baidichang. The emperor of the state of Shu Han would never see his capital of Chengdu again. On the 10th of June 223, Liu Bei reportedly died in Baidichang after having designated Zhuge Liang as a regent while his son Liu Shan grew up. His body was taken back to Chengdu and interred. In the following years, Liu Shan would succeed as emperor of Shu Han, and his regent Zhuge Liang would make peace with Sun Quan. The old alliance between the two southern factions was reestablished, and Sun Quan would eventually declare himself emperor as well, founding the kingdom of Sun Wu. As such, the Three Kingdom era was set. Liu Bei truly marked Chinese history. As a man, he proved the value of determination and strategy. As a leader, benevolence and care for the people. In the future, some would even worship him as a godlike figure, representing benevolence. But, true to his poor origins of mat and sandal weaver, he would also be revered as the patron of shoemakers. Thank you for watching my video, I hope you enjoyed it. If so, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or requests, don't hesitate to leave them in the comment section below.